Hello, and a very warm welcome to everyone. I'm so glad you're here today because we're going to be looking at a short, but honestly, an incredibly powerful section of the Quran. We're talking just 6 verses, but wow, do they get right to the heart of some huge ideas. Things like divine judgment, our own accountability, and the two very different paths our choices can take us down. All right, let's dive in. The source material we're drawing from gives us this brilliant metaphor for these verses, a spiritual scalpel. And is that the perfect image or what? It just perfectly captures the kind of precision we're about to see. This isn't about fuzzy, general ideas. No, this is a sharp, focused examination of core truths, and it's designed to cut right through any confusion to give us this incredible sense of moral clarity. So, our first section is called A Scalpel for Clarity, and that's exactly what we're getting here. We're kind of shifting gears, moving away from some of the historical narratives and diving straight into the foundational principles of divine justice. We're going to unpack what these verses tell us about accountability, about mercy, and about the very real consequences of the moral choices we make. Now, these verses start by laying out two very, very distinct paths. The first one we're going to explore is what we're calling the path of rejection. This is all about those who are shown clear divine signs but make a conscious choice to turn away from them. So let's take a look at what the Quran says happens as a result of that denial. In this first verse, wow, it hits you with this really powerful concept right away: despair. But what's so fascinating is where this despair actually comes from. It's not just some random thing that's imposed on someone from the outside. The text calls it a self-inflicted despair, and that's such a key idea. Think of it like this. Mercy is presented as this wide open door, but by actively, consciously rejecting the divine signs and the reality of being held accountable, a person essentially turns their back and slams that door shut on themselves. So the despair, then, is a direct result of that choice. And this brings us to an absolutely crucial distinction. These verses aren't talking about somebody who's maybe just confused or hasn't heard the message properly. No, the focus here is on a deliberate pattern of intentional rebellion, of being shown clear evidence, the signs, and actively choosing to say, nope, I deny that. And the Quran points out that this is nothing new. History itself is presented as a kind of moral evidence. Verses 44 and 46 talk about this exact cycle playing out over and over again. First, a warning is given. Messengers bring clear proof. Then that proof is denied. People refuse to believe, and their hearts grow hard. And finally, they end up having to face the consequences. History itself becomes this powerful, repeating lesson. This verse here really drives the point home with such finality. The message is incredibly stark. When it comes to divine justice, there are no loopholes. There are no backup plans. There's no one else to call for help. The takeaway is crystal clear. Accountability is direct, it's absolute, and there's just no way around it. So this slide just lays it all out, doesn't it? The core contrast at the heart of these verses. On one side, you've got the path of the obstinate, which leads to despair, hardened hearts, and punishment. But the Quran is all about balance. So now, let's shift our focus to the other side and explore the path of the faithful. All right, so now we get to turn to that second path, the path of faith, which is the hopeful, beautiful alternative. And it's not just about, avoiding punishment. It's about actively working towards something positive, something eternal, the promise that's given to those who combine their belief with real, meaningful action. And here it is, the direct counterbalance to that despair we talked about earlier. And notice this, because it's so important. Belief isn't just a passive feeling in your heart. It's explicitly paired with righteous deeds. And that powerful combination, the verse says, leads to a reward that is totally secure. It can't be lessened, it can't be taken away. In other words, it is completely unassailable. This balance is such a powerful and consistent feature of the Quran's teaching. You get the really stark warning right alongside this beautiful, warm reassurance. It just goes to show that divine justice isn't one-sided. Sure, there are consequences for rejecting truth, but it's also incredibly affirmative and rewarding for those who embrace it. And the section closes with this final, powerful affirmation. Just like history shows us the consequences of rejection, it also shows us the outcome of faith. The promise here is of divine support, of help, and of an ultimate victory for believers who stick with it. It just perfectly completes the picture of a just and balanced system. So we've walked through these two very different, contrasting paths. So what's the big picture here? What's the main takeaway? Let's zoom out a bit and look at the precision of justice. and really pull together the core lessons that our spiritual scalpel has helped us uncover. So when you boil it all down, a few key principles really stand out. First, consequences are the direct result of an intentional choice to reject truth. Second, belief, when it's married to good actions, leads to a reward that is absolutely secure. We're also reminded that history isn't just a bunch of old stories. It's a moral guide, and ignoring its lessons is a risk we take on ourselves. And finally, through it all, we see that while justice is precise and unavoidable, that door to mercy, it's always there. It remains open for anyone who sincerely looks for it. And that really just leaves us with one final question to think about. These verses, with their sharp clarity and their clear principles, they really push us to find that clarity in our own lives. So, in a world that so often feels complicated and morally gray, what does it mean for you personally to seek out and hold on to that kind of moral clarity? Thanks so much for exploring this with me today.